War-torn year of 1945. A soldier died today. Within a decade, a soldier who survived that war would become president, and during his administration, Dwight David Eisenhower would face one of the most bitter political controversies in American history. Joseph McCarthy, a little-known Republican senator from Wisconsin, rose to prominence almost overnight by accusing hundreds of Americans of being supporters of communism. Time became one of the first national publications to attack McCarthy and his methods. It even coined the term McCarthyism. But McCarthy's final downfall came in a 1954 Senate investigation that became known as the Army McCarthy hearings. Network television was in its infancy then, and 8 weeks of televised hearings stripped McCarthy of his mystique. It was climaxed by this exchange between McCarthy and Democratic Senator Stuart Symington.
I have offered to go before any committee, do anything you ask, if I can just get you to come down here and take the oath so we can get the answers to some questions. You're not fooling anyone at all.
Senator,
I'm sure of that.
Senator, let me tell you something.
The chair believes that
the American people have had a look at you for 6 weeks. You're not fooling anyone either.
Senator Potter, 10 minutes.
When the hearings ended, time cast this judgment.
Most televiewers saw not an embattled hero, but an impetuous and indiscriminate attacker who vented his fury on friends and bystanders no less than on his vaguely defined enemies. Having smeared, he impugned smear to others. Having deceived, he charged deception. If he had once been a potential leader in the Republican Party, he now had clearly demonstrated that he lacked the self-discipline necessary in any political organization. He had revealed the nature of his own character.
Another decade and another president to fill the pages of the Nation department of Time magazine. And like Franklin Roosevelt before him, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was the object of a love-hate relationship with the magazine.
President Kennedy campaigned on the theme that he would get the nation moving again. It is embarrassing to President Kennedy today to have his performance measured against that often reiterated campaign promise. And it might be highly embarrassing in 1964.
But just a month earlier, on the occasion of its 40th anniversary, Kennedy sent the magazine a telegram of congratulations. At a gala anniversary party, Time Incorporated President James A. Lennon read Kennedy's message.
I hope I am not wrong in occasionally detecting these days in Time those mature qualities appropriate to an institution entering its 40s. A certain mellowing of tone, a greater tolerance of human frailty, and most astonishingly of all, an occasional hint of fallibility. For Time, congratulations, John F. Kennedy.
Later, Time publisher Bernhard Auer would note, it might be taken as evidence of frailty or fallibility, but Time and its staff greatly valued the relationships, both professional and personal, with its #1 subscriber. Just 8 months after that party, John Fitzgerald Kennedy would die at the hands of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Over Nob Hill and the Harvard Yard, across Washington's broad avenues and Pittsburgh's thrusting chimneys, in 1,000 towns and villages, the bells began to toll. It was the kind of feeling that words could hardly frame. On a Washington street corner, a blind Negro woman plucked at the strings of her guitar, half singing, half weeping a dirge. He promised never to leave me. Later, the words came, torrents of them, but only 2 were really needed. A Greek-born barber said them in his Times Square shop. I cry.
Within months of Kennedy's death, the nation's youth were raising their voices in movements of protest that would lead not only to death and destruction, but would play a part in the downfall of 2 presidents. And on a hot August night in 1965, the lid blew completely off in the Los Angeles ghetto called Watts.
Savagery replaced harmony with nightmarish suddenness. One evening, white Angelenos had nothing to worry about but the humidity. The next, and for 4 nights after that, marauding mobs burned and killed, while 500 policemen and 5,000 National Guardsmen struggled vainly to contain their fury. 27 dead at week's end, nearly 600 injured, 1,700 arrested. Property damage well over $100 million. Riots, such as those in Los Angeles, have no real object, and therein lies the pity and the danger.
And ironically, in eloquent counterpoint to the fury of the rioters, the voice of another man was also bringing the plight of the black American to national awareness.
I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
While Martin Luther King dreamed his dream, and while others burned down our cities, thousands of other youths, both black and white, were protesting with violent vigor our increasing involvement in Vietnam. The 1960s and early 70s became the time of protest, the era of the long, hot summer.
Speak now, speak now, speak now, speak now, speak now, speak now, speak now. Speak the board, stop the war. Speak the board, stop the war. Speak the board, stop the war. Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Hey, hey, LBJ.
Finally, President Lyndon Johnson had enough. In the election year of 1968, at the end of a nationally televised speech on Vietnam, Johnson made a dramatic announcement.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
It never hurts to walk out at the end instead of being carried out. Lyndon Johnson, realizing that he was in danger of being carried out, chose the more graceful exit.
But now in 1968, shock would follow shock. Just 4 days after Johnson's announcement, the nation, the world, was jolted by the murder of Martin Luther King. As early as 1963, when King was Time's Man of the Year, the magazine wrote, "Wherever he goes, death hovers in the form of crackpots." 5 years later, death struck.
In Memphis, through the budding branches of trees surrounding a tawdry boarding house, a white sniper's bullet cut down Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., preeminent voice of the just aspirations and long-suffering patience of black America. If ever there were a transcendent Negro symbol, it was Martin Luther King. Bridging the void between black despair and white unconcern, he spoke so powerfully of and from the wretchedness of the Negro's condition that he became the moral guardian of civil rights, not only to Americans, but also to the world beyond.
62 days later, the jarring shock would come again. Senator Robert Kennedy was well on his way toward winning the Democratic presidential nomination. On June 4th, he won the California primary and told his cheering supporters that his next goal was a victory in Illinois.